Hi, everyone. Welcome to When Virtual Collaboration Prevails and Fails. This is joint work by 5 of us across 4 countries. Keiji Fujimura at Aichi Institute of Technology in Japan, Yuko Ikuta at Bunkyo University, also in Japan, Oksana Bukharina at Ukrainian Catholic University, Kristen Ziegner-Llewellyn at Mittweida University of Applied Sciences in Germany, and myself, Maha Rakshandehu at Doshisha Women's College of Liberal Arts in Japan. The 5 of us joined the online International Student Conference together. This talk is what we learned when it worked and what we learned when it did not. Here is what we will cover. 5 blocks. First, the program itself. We will spend 1 slide on OISC 2025, so you know where the data comes from. Second, our argument and our framework. The argument in 1 line. Digital COIL must address cultural patterns, not just language. Our framework is Bennett's DMIS, and we're going to introduce it early, so you have the lens before you see the findings. Third, the 4 findings that came out of the data: English proficiency, cultural communication norms, digital tools, and the limits of the virtual format. Fourth, 5 institutions, 5 stories. Spotlights from HSMW in Germany, UCU in Ukraine, Bunkyo and AIT in Japan. Fifth, implications and discussion. 6 concrete design recommendations, then Q&A. Before we get into the study itself, let me give you a brief background on the program these students came from. OISC, the Online International Student Conference, is a student-led 2-day virtual program. The 2025 edition ran on November 8 and December 6, 2 Saturdays, roughly 1 month apart. Day 1 is for icebreaking, cultural exchange, and choosing a group research topic. Between the 2 days, students work asynchronously on Zoom, Padlet, WhatsApp, Instagram, and Google Docs. Day 2 is for presentations and cross-room discussion. The scale matters for context. There were 126 student delegates, 20 student facilitators, 11 institutions across 5 countries. The delegates worked in 20 cross-institution groups. For this panel, we are not analyzing the whole program. We are analyzing 44 students from 5 of the 11 institutions: AIT, DWC, and Bunkyo in Japan, HSMW in Germany, and UCU in Ukraine. That is the dataset behind everything you will see in the next slides. A quick map of the study: 5 universities, 44 students. 1 conference-based COIL program that consisted of 2 days of synchronous Zoom, plus asynchronous work on Padlet, WhatsApp, Instagram, and Google Docs. The student mix spans Japan, Germany, Ukraine, Indonesia, and the Philippines. On the Japanese side, 3 institutions: AIT, DWC, and Bunkyo. From Germany, 11 students at HSMW. From Ukraine, 7 students at UCU. We used Bennett's Developmental Model of Intercultural Sensitivity, DMIS, as our analytical lens. The headline number is that every participant reported some intercultural growth, but the more interesting story is in how that growth happened and where collaboration broke down. That is what the next slides cover. Here is our central claim. Digital COIL design must address cultural patterns, not just language. 3 pillars hold this up. First, English proficiency. It was a universal barrier across the program, but the form it took varied by culture. Second, the cultural and digital intersection. High-context communication norms collided with the more direct style that digital platforms tend to push. Third, we want to redefine what call competence means. It is not only linguistic. It includes cultural technological adaptation. The practical implication is that COIL programs need differentiated support and differentiated platforms. One size does not fit 5 universities across 4 time zones. Before the findings, let me introduce the analytical lens we used throughout. Milton Bennett's Developmental Model of Intercultural Sensitivity, first published in 1986. The model maps a developmental path from ethnocentric to ethno-relative. The early stages, denial, defense, and minimization, are where students either ignore cultural differences or assume everyone is basically the same. The later stages, acceptance, adaptation, and integration are where students recognize real differences and begin to shift their behavior across contexts. So why do we use this framework? Because intercultural growth is not a yes or no question. It is a movement. DMIS gives us a way to talk about where in the program students started and where they ended up. I'd like you to keep these stages in mind as you hear the findings that follow. Now let's go back to DMIS. Despite the challenges across digital tools and cultural friction, intercultural growth did happen. Please look at the arrows: defense, minimization, acceptance, adaptation. We saw movement, and we saw it across institutions. Please listen to DWC Student 3. I noticed myself moving from the minimization stage, where I underestimated cultural differences, to the acceptance stage, where I recognized and appreciated my partner's different way of speaking and thinking. That is a student literally narrating their own DMIS movement without us asking. The student saw the program as a developmental event, not just as a class activity. That is what we want COIL to do, even when the platforms doesn't work well and the deadlines are missed. Our first finding is English proficiency. Look at the bars. AIT, DWC, UCU, and Bunkyo all show 100% of students reporting English as a barrier. HSMW Germany shows 55%. So everyone struggled, but in different ways. Listen to DWC Student 11. I used the phrase "not interested." What I actually meant to convey was that many Japanese people are so preoccupied with their own lives that they lack the mental margin. My phrasing made it sound like Japanese people simply have indifferent personalities. That is a pragmatic problem, not a vocabulary problem. The student knew the words. The words landed wrong. Now compare UCU Student 5. One of the biggest things I learned was that it is okay to just start speaking, even if my English is not perfect. Same language barrier, different cultural face. One is about precision and the cost of getting it wrong. The other is about lowering the threshold to start at all. Our second finding is cultural communication norms. Japanese high context norms became a specific COIL challenge. Two voices first. DWC Student 7 says, Japanese students tend to avoid speaking first or expressing themselves openly in front of others. In my perspective, it can often have a negative impact, particularly in this kind of global situation. And HSMW Student 7 adds, with the exception of the Japanese students, who had to be addressed directly in order to speak, and even then, it took some time for them to respond. 11 out of 13 DWC students named Japanese passivity as a barrier. Fear of public mistakes inhibited engagement. Meanwhile, German students naturally filled silences. That created asymmetric group dynamics. AIT had one student who explicitly named this pattern and described working through it. Bunkyo corroborated. 2 of 4 students reflected on Japanese passivity, and student 1 noted, on day 1, I mostly spoke only when someone asked me directly. This is the kind of cultural patterning that any COIL design has to plan for, not hope around. Our third finding is about digital tools. This is where collaboration broke down. At AIT, one group chat rescued a project. Another suffered from unclear coordination and the bystander effect. At DWC, 8 out of 13 students said WhatsApp was barely used. The group chat was not set up until 2 weeks before the conference. Tasks were incomplete before day 2. At HSMW, the last slide was edited at 4 a.m., 3 hours before the conference. Their cultural diagnosis was sharp. WhatsApp is not standard in Asia. At UCU, war-related power outages and connection failures shaped what was even possible. Time zones added more friction. Here is the voice of DWC Student 9. I guess it is why we did not create a group chat. It was a mistake. Just a few hours before day 2 started, we had not considered our questions yet. Bunkyo was the bright spot. Bunkyo students used translation apps, ChatGPT, and subtitles as adaptive comprehension strategies. Tech as a comprehension aid, not a coordination failure. This distinction matters for how we redesign the conference. Our fourth finding is virtual format limitations. I'm going to explain what technology enabled and what it could not replace. On the enabled side, participation across 5 countries at once. WhatsApp and Instagram rescued some groups mid-project. Google Docs let students build scripts asynchronously. Technology lowered travel barriers, including for UCU students under wartime conditions. On the limits side, emotional connection and team cohesion. Nonverbal cues, nodding, facial expression, presence. Spontaneous participation, the shared sense of accomplishment at the close. DWC Student 5 says, in an online setting, it was difficult to stay proactive. That feeling was somewhat reduced online. Virtual COIL is not a substitute for in-person mobility. It is something different. The design question is how to lean into what it enables and plan around what it loses.
Next, we are going to move on to university spotlights. First is HSMW in Germany, low-context communicators who adapted. 11 out of 11 HSMW students reported personal growth, the most consistent finding in the entire study. German students defaulted to initiating when partners stayed silent. They were also the only group to offer a cultural explanation for the WhatsApp failures. Student 7 says, "Normally, I am an introverted person who does not usually start conversations. However, since my group members were even more reserved than I was, I stepped out of my comfort zone and started the conversations." Meanwhile, student 11 says, "At the beginning of day 1, I was not sure whether a real conversation would develop. Looking back, this might have been related to cultural norms in group communication, or simply initial shyness." That second quote is doing something important. The student is not just reporting silence. The student is reaching for an explanation. In DMIS terms, that is movement toward acceptance.
Now let's talk about Ukraine, UCU. Students built confidence under wartime conditions. 7 out of 7 UCU students overcame English fear. 7 out of 7 recognized cultural differences. 6 of 7 want to join again. 4 of 7 made lasting friendships. Student 5 says, "What meant the most to me was being able to share what is happening in Ukraine right now with students from other countries. Having people genuinely listen and engage with our reality felt incredibly important and empowering." Student 4 added, "Even after the project, we stay in touch and follow each other on social media, and I am really happy that I have friends from Japan, the Philippines, Germany, and Indonesia." The UCU story is not just about COIL working. It is about what COIL can mean when the everyday context is war. Solidarity, witness, friendship, things technology enabled, even with infrastructure failing around them.
Next is Bunkyo University. Many of them felt growth between day 1 and day 2. Student 1, compared to day 1, I spoke up much more on day 2. On day 1, I mostly spoke only when someone asked me directly. But on day 2, I was able to speak up on my own. I feel that this was a sign of my growth. Student 2, in comparison with day 1, I was able to facilitate the discussion better and utilize English in an easier way. This experience contributed to significant growth in terms of self-expression ability and breaking the silence. 4 out of 4 Bunkyo students reported growth in English confidence and communication competence. The shift was from speaking only when addressed to initiating discussion. Adaptive use of ChatGPT and subtitles made participation possible.
Next is AIT. Engineering students reframed COIL as workplace rehearsal. Our AIT sample is small, 3 students, so I am not going to overclaim. But what these 3 told us pushes back on a story you might expect. You might expect high-context silence. We did not see that. What we saw was a coordination problem. Student 2. Few people took the initiative to lead the meetings, so it took time to set deadlines and compile information. That is the bystander effect, not a cultural silence problem. The fix is different. They assigned a rotating chair on day 1. More distinctive to AIT is how Student 2 frames the value of the experience. In mechanical design, opportunities to speak with international factory personnel on site arise. I believe this experience will help ensure smooth progress in planning. He is not talking about intercultural sensitivity. He is talking about the factory floor. For our engineering students, COIL becomes a rehearsal for the workplace. With only 3 students, the most honest takeaway is the variation. Collaboration scores 5, 5, and 2.
Same institution, same program, very different experiences. That supports the panel's case. Differentiated design has to work at the group level, not just the institutional level.
Next, I am going to discuss what this means for COIL design. 6 recommendations. All of them are grounded in what students told us. 1. Differentiated language support. Normalize the diverse English students bring. Explicit reassurance helps learners from cultures where mistakes are stigmatized. 2. Platform diversification. Do not rely on a single asynchronous tool. WhatsApp is not universal across Asia. Build in structured check-in protocols. 3. Structured facilitation training. Facilitators need real tools for managing silence and drawing out high-context communicators without creating discomfort. 4. Pre-COIL cultural orientation. Orientation on high and low context could accelerate the DMIS movement that students currently only reach mid-program. 5. Extended format. A longer timeline gives space for relationship building and deeper intercultural development. 6. Context-sensitive design. UCU's wartime context reminds us that COIL has to account for infrastructure inequality and the emotional weight some students carry in. So let's move on to our conclusion. English proficiency was a barrier for all 40 students, but how that barrier showed up was culturally specific. Asynchronous digital platforms consistently underperformed. Platform assumptions around WhatsApp added to the failures. Japanese high-context norms created observable asymmetries that COIL design needs to address. Ukrainian students showed transformative growth under extreme constraints. And Bunkyo students confirmed all the major findings: the English barrier, Japanese passivity norms, DMIS movement toward acceptance, and adaptive digital tool use. Our conclusion is hopeful. Every participant reported intercultural development. We believe that COIL works, and differentiated design makes it work better. That is all. Thank you for watching. The 5 of us are at the email addresses listed here. If you want to follow up on anything we covered, please reach out to whichever of us is closest to your area of interest.